And we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our second session of Girls Go STEM. I'm Olivia Howard, and I'm the Teen Services Librarian at Mission Viejo Library. This inspirational speaker series provides opportunities for children's, teens, and their families to learn from women STEM leaders from around the country in medical, engineering, and information technology fields. I'd like to begin by introducing you to Anya Pramanik, a member of the library's Teen Advisory Board. She developed this program, and she'll tell you a little bit more about it and introduce today's guest speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. Thank you so much to Olivia and Mission Viejo Library for hosting my Girls Go STEM series. I am Anya Hermanic, an ambassador with Girl Scouts of Orange County. As part of my Gold Award project, Girls Go STEM, I'm excited to welcome you all to my STEM speaker series. The purpose of my project is to expose young girls in STEM and connect them to female STEM leaders from whom they can learn about their life as a girl in STEM. We have a Girl Up STEM club. Please join using this link in chat. I'll add the link in a second. This will allow you to receive updates and have access to future events. We are about to hear from an incredibly accomplished and inspiring Miss Bernadette McDermott. She is Vice President of Design and Architecture at Public Storage. She has a profound insight as a female STEM leader in the field of architecture. Here's a quick reminder of the format. We will have a presentation followed by a Q&A session. Please feel free to submit your questions in the chat, and she'll address them during the Q&A session. There will be a very short survey posted in the chat section at the end of the presentation. Please fill out this survey. We will have a raffle drawing, and one lucky winner will be notified through the email ID provided. We also have a winner from our last workshop, and her name is Braylon Seeley. So Braylon, if you're on here, you'll receive your gift card prize by email. Without further ado, let's give a warm virtual welcome to Bernadette. We are thrilled to have you with us today, and we look forward to your enlightening presentation. The stage is all yours.
Thank you, Anya. I'd like to start off with a good morning, everyone. I'm a little nervous, so it's always fun to talk to new people and new prospective STEM leaders. So for me, it's always helpful and fun to have a little bit of an icebreaker and some fun facts about myself. I'm more than just a title, and more than just a woman in STEM. So I just want to share some fun facts, and hopefully this will get some of my nerves out and also help you guys warm up and ask questions and then participate throughout the presentation or towards the end of the presentation. So some fun facts. I'm a dog mom. I have two beautiful, cute little dogs, a Shih Tzu and a little bulldog. I love cooking. If I had a lot of more time, I would be cooking every single day. I also love to do world travel. I'm a speaker for the American Heart Association. I'm very passionate about heart health, and particularly for women. I participate and volunteer for the Go Red movement for women to be more heart health conscious. And this is just more for myself. I love all things fashion and shoes. It brings me joy, it brings me beauty, and it's something I find it as a life artwork, like a living artwork. So with that, why are we here? Like, why I went STEM? Frankly, it was fun. When I first entered the profession, there was no term of STEM. It wasn't a concept. It wasn't even a thought process. If anything, it just appeared fun. And let me unpack that for you. I have an image here of the Bean in Chicago. So for those who've traveled to Chicago or are in that area, I found this image to be very compelling, mostly from not only from an artwork, but from a spatial experience and also from an engineering experience. One is a really great work of art. It's a bean in one of the prominent cities in the United States. It's also architecturally and engineering wise, like pretty fascinating to see how it was built and to see how it was erected. And I was curious about that when I was younger. but also what really captured it creates a space, it creates a moment. And the reason why I went into my chosen profession of architecture and engineering is that we live, breathe, and sleep in spaces throughout our life. If we're visiting a hospital, yes, you could go into engineering or the medical profession, but you need the building to operate, maintain, and thrive around the people you're serving and helping healing. Same thing when it goes with schools. The same thing goes with courthouses. Um, and even though this is an art display in the middle of the city, a sculpture, it creates a moment, it creates some shelter, it creates a reflection of the city, and people pause. And I found that very interesting. Um, but really, what I found to be STEM very exciting about is that you could be creative, you could be a designer, you could be a contractor. There's a lot of partners. There's a lot of people you come across. It's not one single engineer type. The process is collaborative. It's ever changing, and you meet some very inspiring people throughout the entire architecture engineering realm, and the reasons why people go into the profession, why they put the thought into creating a building, or why they created an entrance, or why did they create it, like, or even like how you structurally create a space to hold its own, and it almost defies gravity. I found that very visionary. I found it very exciting, honestly, and I wanted to understand more. Like, how do you put those details together? How do you construct them? And I wanted to unpack the puzzle and figure out how to do it. So, in a nutshell, all those things really got my curiosity into STEM in this particular field ignited. Now, throughout my journey of my projects, of my profession, I've built quite a bit, and this is just some of my favorite projects. I am currently the vice president of public storage, and I'm managing about 100 people across the country, and architect partners and engineers, and they they cross all different types of disciplines, and we'll talk a little bit more about that down further in the presentation. Um, but some of my projects here I wanted to just highlight, just to give you a synopsis, or just kind of like a glimpse of what you can work if you go into STEM in this particular field. I worked on Disney Cars Land. I helped design it, I helped engineer it, I helped build it. So if you guys ever gone to Disney California Adventure, you most likely walked through the space. You most likely enjoyed the rides. You enjoyed the environment. Well, I built that, and I'm very proud of that. The next project next to that Cars Land is the Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton, and that was a $500 million job down in San Diego. I was the lead manager and executive on that job, and I was able to build a hospital brand new to service our Marines and sailors serving our country. So anytime you go down to San Diego, you can't miss it. um, this next project is actually an office now, a current office for Tencent out in Playa Vista, and I found it very unique. It was one of my first projects as a leader for a region that I brought in, but I found it fascinating because we were challenged with what we can and can't do with structure. So we had to engineer the building to hold itself up with minimal structure, and you can see there's a huge component of the building just hanging over, and we had to engineer it, and I had to work with structural engineers to make it happen. Um, on the bottom left corner is the University Gateways, the student housing project for USC. That's my alma mater. I went to USC for architecture, and later on in life, I ended up going to get my MBA at Michigan. But my fledgling experience of USC sparked my interest in giving back to my community, and that was one of the ways I gave back to USC. Is I was the manager and I led the University Gateway Student Housing Project. This project in the center, I show an in-process project photo, but it's now complete. Anyone could go visit it. It is the Los Angeles Federal Courthouse. And this project is my pride and joy. It's my jewel. It defies everything about structure. It is a sustainability wise is a LEED platinum building. It's one of the most environmentally conscious courthouses in the country, with a lot of forward thinking technology beyond the solar panels. But every single component in the building was thought in an effort to reduce our overall environmental impact. And then the last one is the Hall of Justice. This is a project that was very complex. It's now it used to be the one-stop shop for the judicial system for Los Angeles County. And during the Northridge earthquake, was no longer structurally sound to work in. And I had the opportunity to team with some great engineers and partners in the field to restore it, make it safe, and open it back up as offices. I love this project, aside from its beauty, but just the complexity and so many layers of it was very interesting. So as you can see, there is a vast type of building types and that I worked on and I continue to work on, that that really has fulfilled my reason why, and continues to spark my interest in architecture and engineering. So my journey, let's talk about that. It isn't overnight. That there is the decision was made, and it was definitely not easy to go down this road. This is actually an image of Glamour magazine when World Trade Center, the high rise in New York, was being built. And this is one of the few images that the space was complete, but the rest of it still had steel. It still had like cable rails and glass. It was still a work in progress. And being a woman in the architecture, construction industry, engineering industry, I learned that I needed to create my own rules. One, because I would miss all the fun, but also I had to forge my own path. And I never considered myself saying I've reached my success or I reached my full potential, because it's always under construction. And that's why I like the second quote here. But it's something that you have to continuously work on. And just like the industry itself, it needs a refresh consistently. And that's where I contribute to that. So the key thing is, like, you have to stay true to yourself. For myself, it hasn't been easy. I am often the only woman at the table for construction meetings, engineering meetings. And that's okay. And I think that staying true to myself and knowing my expertise and knowing the strength of my experience and my own toolkits, I've had the confidence to be there. And that's where I encourage you all to understand, to learn about yourselves. Like, what is your courage? What is your strength? What is your confidence? And channel that. So when you are faced with times when you're the only woman or young girl at the table for a project or for your field of choice, that it's you feel like you belong there. And that's helped me. I'm sure some folks have heard of imposter syndrome, like I don't deserve to be here, or really why have I earned this, or like you start questioning yourself. I definitely have to say I've had that experience. But going back to knowing who I am and my strengths and my experience has helped me overcome that. And the biggest challenges for me is actually through my career, as I've had people, colleagues, co-workers, question my abilities. And it's not necessarily because they don't have doubt in my confidence or my technical skills, but sometimes it's more their own questioning of their technical skills. And I'll give you an example. When I was early in, as I was transcending into my career into manager, I I was getting promoted, and a friend, a colleague, someone who, a confidant that I would trust, he was really upset, and he made it known that he was upset. He did not want to work. He made the project more challenging to complete. Um, but that's when I started realizing that my success doesn't always bring joy to everyone. And my confidence and my technical skills doesn't bring confidence to others. So in those instances, as much as it was hard to get past those moments, I had to take a step back and understand the other person's perspective. um, I could have just bulldozed that person and just to get the job done, but in an effort to be a better team player, not just a leader, I had to address the situation. And that's what I encourage you all. If you see an opportunity and there's someone who is in your way, or who's someone who isn't supportive in your career choices or your whatever it may be, even in your like promotions, it's okay to address it and to confront it, because they may not agree. And obviously, when I say confront, be cordial about it, but it's um, it's important to address it, because what I've learned from that experience, if I didn't address it, it created my own self doubt, and you start building those monkeys on your back of doubt in yourself, and it's not needed. It's not necessary. You don't need to carry someone else's doubt on your back. Um, you know, uh, the other thing I struggled with, which I'm glad to see come, especially now we have STEM and we have more focus on getting young women early into the profession, is, you know, I did experience not having a lot of women in the room. And that's why I love being invited to these conversations to help encourage other young women to go into the field of architecture, engineering, and construction. Um, because when I came to the room, there was a lot of women in the engineer entry level, but as you started getting to middle management and upper management and executive levels, there was less and less women, and it was hard to collaborate, and it was hard to understand um, what, like, I did feel isolated sometimes. And one of the things that I had to overcome with that, it was not everyone would see my perspective, and just because I was a woman. But the upside is that I wasn't the only woman who was experiencing this, and I did with partnership with some other women in my company. We created a monthly women's dinner where we all will all get together and uh, commiserate and talk about our experiences, and to like explore how we could have handled something better, or how do we navigate a tough situation at the job. And that was really, really helpful, especially as I was, again, growing earlier in my career. Now I'm in the higher executive level of my career, and there's less women at the top. So now it's more like, how do I use my voice and amplify my voice to help forge the path for others? So it's not as hard, and it makes it a little bit easier for women to see that there is a path. Um, I did receive support with women along the way, in most cases. And I have to say that the challenge that I had throughout this process in this industry early on was there weren't that many women leaders. And for all the women that were entering the field, there was way more women entering the field than leaders to be mentors. So I oftentimes had to find mentors and men who were allies and supportive of women in the field. Um, and there were some women who I did find it hard to actually connect as a mentor because they too had their own hard path through through architecture, construction, and engineering. And they were of a mindset of like, well, if they had it rough, I needed to have it rough. And they didn't make it as easy to get through it. Obviously not every woman felt that way. But it did make it a challenge early on. But now at this point, I try to make it as I try to encourage people and young women to look past just working with women and getting support from women, but also getting support with men, um, and all people who will grow their career. Um, I haven't seen the glass ceiling just yet, um, in my career. I'll say that, but I I have seen companies that they just don't have that many women at the president or CEO level. That's not to say that that's not going to happen. Um, but as I was mentioning, as more women rise to the occasion and they enter the field and they expand their careers and they go up, we'll see more of that. At this moment in time, I'm not seeing it, but not to say that it hasn't been easy, but it's been very fruitful, as you can see where I'm at now. Um, But with that in mind, there are countless opportunities out there for this field. Um, at public storage, like we have plenty of opportunities where you get to travel across the country. You're overseeing and managing contractors and engineers. We have high rises, mid rises, low rises. If you go more the traditional architecture route, you're designing and you're leading a group of engineers and how to build it. And there's many ways to get involved with this profession. From an opportunity perspective, like there's mentorship programs. If you're interested in doing that, there's individual mentorship programs often offered by general contractors, architects, and engineers. Uh, Many companies and organizations have sponsored scholarships. There is a huge investment and interest in architecture, engineering, and construction to encourage young women into the profession. So you could look up any company and there are sponsored scholarships. There's also a lot of professional organizations. I just highlighted a handful here. There's hundreds, but these are some of the ones that I'm most familiar with that I know provide mentorship programs, scholarship programs, um, and informational sessions. The American Institute of Architects, Urban Land Institute, they are more for the developers and uh, and you're working very closely with the business aspect of it. There's the Associated General Contractors, they're the builders. USGBC is the United States Green Building Council. So if you're into sustainability, the environment. They have a lot of opportunity there for growth and learning case studies. There's the American Society of Civil Engineers. Believe it or not, every single builder, contractor, if they're not an architect, they're a civil engineer by training. So that's a good start to go into it. And every structural engineer has to be a civil engineer first. So it's a good pathway to learn what in civil engineering entails. And this profession, you could be building buildings, you could be building roadways and bridges, but this also dovetails to other things, like you could build a ship, you could build um, you, you can actually make a canal. All these groups here actually support all of that development and construction. And you also get a good aspect. You get a good opportunity to get your hands a little bit dirty if you do some volunteer work, and if you support Habitat for Humanity's Rebuilding Together. A lot of the companies that are in the engineering, construction, and architecture support these groups, and you get to have one-on-one time with them. You get to volunteer and do a good cause. And there's also partnerships through universities and through the K through 12 programs with through local universities. Like my alma mater, USC, for instance, they have a partnership program to promote STEM at the local elementary and middle schools. And that's a great opportunity for you all to learn and grow. And if you don't have that partnership in your school, I would reach out to your local university or local college there to see if there are opportunities to partner your elementary school or your middle school or your high school. Now, as I was mentioning, there's countless career opportunities. Um, there's architects, there's civil engineers. In my field, there's mechanical engineers. They're the ones who are handling all the air and heating and cooling. They're also handling now more of the net carbon zero initiatives. There's structural engineers, like how do they actually hold the building up? There's electrical engineers, so that includes from lighting to all the circuitry. There's also with photovoltaic panels, the solar panels, they support that. Low voltage engineers, which is more of the like the IT and the data that goes into the building. There's engineers that support that. If you want to specialize in lighting engineering, like to fire life safety, that's the fire sprinklers and the fire strobes. There's even vertical transportation engineers. So if you're really into going into elevators, there's even a specialty of engineers of that. And there's software engineering. All of these professions rely on unique, I don't want to say custom, but very niche software programs that nowhere else that you could find. And we need people who, we're looking for people to continue to evolve the software engineering to support the building development and growth. And one of the key things I want to share with you, one of the key things is that I've just rattled off all these engineers and architects and opportunities, career opportunities, but we all work as one team when we're delivering a building. And that's the really cool thing about this profession and what I enjoy so much. I may not know, I'm not a lighting engineer or I'm not a structural engineer, I'm an architect. Um, but I get to work with them and I get to learn alongside them. And I get to hear their expertise and I grow my toolkit in how I speak and how I design and how I build a building. So it's, if you're interested in not only doing one thing and you want to get into and you just want to get exposed to more than just the engineering of your choice, this is a great way to go about it, is going into architecture and construction, because you get exposed to all types of engineers. Now, emerging fields, there's a, I don't have a crystal ball. The that's kind of hard to say, but there's really 4 key areas that I'm seeing that there is emerging fields. The net carbon zero, being more environmentally friendly to the world and like minimizing our carbon footprint. When we build, that's very important, but we're all trying to learn and understand what that means. But that's a great opportunity for you and to enter that field to explore what can we do to reduce our carbon footprint and be more stewards of our environment. There's also building information modeling, which the acronym is BIM. That's been around for quite a couple of decades, but that has evolved quite a bit. So building information modeling is, imagine like a video game. Someone creates the building in a computer setting, so you have a tool to understand the space and how the components of the building that was engineered come together. And the reason why I say that this is an emerging field, even though the technology has been around for a while, we're learning that the model itself is so useful that we could start building more information into it and making it a very powerful tool. From an operation standpoint, like it could tell you what zones of a building is requires more work, or requires attention, for instance. It's also a data collecting base of information of the building. So we're just like learning the capacity of this tool, and that's a great emerging field that a lot of people don't fully understand. The two newer ones is virtual reality and artificial intelligence. And I'll say the virtual reality, like if anyone plays video games and they wear the goggles, that's where I've seen that get adapted for us, because sometimes our clients that we work with don't fully understand the spatial building, and that's one of the things that, as an architect and a contractor and an engineer, is hard to overcome. And like, how do you explain to someone that the ceiling is going to be so tall and it's going to make you feel like warm and inviting, or it's going to be really tall and really spacious where it's overwhelming amount of space, like, and even the sizing of the space, like people don't understand what a 5 foot by 5 foot space feels versus a 20 by 20 foot space feels. And we're beginning to leverage those Oculus, those goggles, and the BIM model to create a virtual reality space for our clients to actually experience the space before it's built. It hasn't been used widely or as often, but it's definitely an emerging technology in how we're trying to be creative to use the software and the hardware out there. Artificial intelligence, that's something that's still brand new into our industry. There's been a lot of criticism within our industry about how it could squash creative at the side of things. Don't know much about it yet. It's too early to tell, but I'm excited to see where it can lead to. Networking and mentorship opportunities, one of the key things that I encourage everyone who's really interested in this. There's this program called the ACE Mentor Program. It stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering. And they walk you through a cycle of a project, and they with sponsorship, with direct mentorship from professionals and leaders for your particular school or high school, and you are competing and participating against other local high schools too. It's a great way to get exposed to our industry. There's also, like I mentioned before, the other professional organizations that would be that would expose you to STEM in different aspects and different specialties. I'm very excited and passionate about the industry. I see a lot of room to grow and potential, and I'm always excited to see my buildings come to life. I love to go into the office and work with the team that I work with, and every single project is unique. Every single project is different. At the end of the day, I could actually see it for myself. I see a tangible building there, and you all get to enjoy it too. So I hope you enjoy some of this experience with me today, and some of the exposure to the architecture, construction, engineering field. And hopefully you guys are encouraged to explore more into this options. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for questions.
Yeah, so this concludes the presentation part of this workshop. Thank you to Bernadette for all this insightful information. It was very informative, and it was very interesting hearing about your journey in STEM. So yeah, now we'll begin the Q&A session. So if any of you have questions, please feel free to type them in chat and we'll address them. And in the meantime, I will ask Bernadette a few questions myself. So Bernadette, what skills or qualities do you believe are crucial for success in the architecture industry?
One is a soft skill. Actually, two is soft skills. One is communication, being able to communicate clearly, and to having a positive attitude, right? But a little bit of grit too. From a skill set, understanding that the technology that you use to create is great, the technical aspect of it, but you need to be able to communicate it. I think that is one critical success factor that I do encourage everyone, is not only the technology. You have to use the communication skills to sell your idea, to pitch your idea, to convince others about your idea. That's really critical. And and people may just say no. And that's where the positive attitude goes a long way, because you got to keep on forging through. It's like, okay, how do we make and be open-minded to it, to the feedback that you get.
Yeah, I think communication is a very important skill. Someone has a question. They said, can you talk more about what it was like to build Cars Land and what were the challenges and fun things about building something in a theme park?
One of the fun things. Sorry, can you repeat that question one more time? Because I started getting some questions online here. So can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, it says, can you talk more about what it was like to build Cars Land and what were like the challenges and fun things about building something in a theme park?
um, well, it was actually a very interesting experience, because we were able to partner with Disney Imagineering, and we worked with the Disney Imagineers. And it was just great to just see like their ideas. Like they were like, how do we make this like come to life? Like I had to watch the movie Cars maybe 100 times to understand what they were trying to go for the space, which that was fun. um but I have to say, some of the things is, with creative and with engineering, there's always an aspect of change, and we got a lot of changes along the way, or something wasn't quite right. So as a patron going to Disneyland, I want to see perfection. I want to see the movie, right? When I walk in there, I want to be transported to the space. And that space there was Cars Land. And sometimes we weren't getting it right. So that was a bit of a challenge, to do the work over a handful of times, to ensure that we were making the right decisions and delivering the vision that the creative Imagineers wanted. The other challenge was, there was the rocks. That is actually all hand carved. We had to do a huge structural steel structure, and we had to put the material to make it look like the rocks from behind Cars Land. And there's only 3 carvers that specializes in this in the world. One from Japan, one from France, and one from Germany. Neither one of them spoke language, and we had to hire them and come in for them to hand carve the rocks at Disney Cars Land. That was a challenge to coordinate. Um, mostly mostly just because of the specialty behind it. You what I learned a lot about theme parks is that there are key specialties that are few and far between to find. Like even the neon lights, for instance, there's very few people who create neon lights these days. So where do we find them? How do we engineer them? And how do we get it the right color, the exact same design as the movie? Is like, how do we recreate that? So every single component had its challenge. And uh, from a ride perspective, there was 2 rides that posed an engineering challenge. One was the racers, the track, because we had to go to get the little cars to speed at a certain go a certain speed at a certain distance. So we had to build the test track so we could test the cars, and the car itself was coming from Germany. So we had to do a lot of pre-work to test it out before we put it into the ride. The other one is no longer there, is Luigi's Flying Tires. We had to have these huge, like, mechanical drums to push air up to make these saucers fly. And it worked for a couple of months. It didn't work too long, and now the ride is something else. But that was a huge engineering overhaul. Like that was like, how do we actually make the vision of the ride happen, like a flying saucer on air, like a air hockey table. That was very challenging. Overall, I think the biggest thing was like, we building at an active theme park. Everyone wants to see what's going on behind the scenes and behind the the wall. It was a lot of fun. I have to say it's a lot of fun. You get to see the behind the scenes of Disney. That was the fun part for me uh from working at a theme park. But there was definitely challenges, and it was just fun to figure out how to make that work.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've gone to Cars Land myself, and it's really cool how like it literally looks like Cars Land from the movie. So another person has a question, and they're asking for the mentorship programs you mentioned, are there any like, is there anyone it's aimed towards or like age or location requirements? Because this person is a mechanical engineering learner based in South Africa and they're interested. So would they qualify?
Um, you know, for international, it's slightly different. A lot of these organizations were geared for the United States, but there are equivalent organizations that are available in Europe and in the Commonwealth countries. Um, I know from a sustainability perspective, there is an organization equivalent to like the USGBC called BREEAM, BREEAM, or that's the acronym. They're available in South Africa, and they too have mentorship programs and internship programs as well. Um, but I don't have specific uh, recommendations in regards to mentorship programs out there in those organizations. There's equivalents, but I don't have that available off the top of my head.
No worries. And another person has a question. What programs or apps do you use to design like your architecture and like what programs do you recommend to getting started for getting started to learn more about the architecture field?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of software tools. From a conceptual, I would say SketchUp is really great. That's when you start uh, drawing and sketching, and you start doing it a little bit more 3D. Before you used to do a pen and paper. This allows you to do it on your tablet. Um, the next thing there is Revit. It's by Autodesk, and Revit is a 3D software program where you build all the lines that you normally see on traditional blueprints. And our construction team members, our trade partners who are building everything, they still rely on blueprints. So Revit, you're able to create everything in 3D, and you're able to slice the building up per floor, external each side, the roof and everything. Um, but they um, but they rely on that, and that software translates that into blueprints. So if you're interested in that, I would go into Revit. And if you're a mechanical engineer to structural engineer, they have Revit's programs that are specifically designed for that engineering field that you're interested in, because they provide more trade, disciplinary specific tools. Uh, I would say those are the te- two key programs that every profession uses. And if you want to do like the beautiful pictures and renderings, and translate that to like a marketing material, like almost looks like a photo. You could go into Adobe Illustrator, you could do Rhino. There's a handful of other software tools, but the two core ones I would say is SketchUp and Autodesk's Revit programs.
That's great. Yeah, I've heard of SketchUp before actually. Another person has a question. I'm not sure if you're in this, but can you talk more about how you design houses? I'm not
How
sure.
you design houses, that's an interesting thing. So when I first entered the field, when I was in college and as an intern, I actually was designing houses. And at first, I really thought I was going to go design houses. So I'm happy to speak to that. Oftentimes, you start with talking to your client, like talk to the person who's going to live there. Like, what do they want? And that really goes to anything that you're building. Like, what is your key goal? What do you want the space to be? And from there, you start designing like all the different spaces, and you start laying it out. Do you want the entrance next to the living room? Do you want the kitchen completely open? As you start laying out and programming these spaces, that's when you start elevating up the house, and you start building the walls, like and then deciding where you want the walls. Once you get all past that and you get agreed with the person who's going to live there, like this is what they want, then you got to engineer it and like where does the structure need to go, like do they want speakers and surround sound on the outside of their house, like that's when you get into the specialty things. um Once that is designed, the shell of the house, that's when you start pulling out all the materials. Like, do you want carpet? Do you want wood? Do you want paint? Do you want a huge chandelier? And you basically start from the idea, you go into the layout and planning, then you go into the details of all the structure, the plumbing, the mechanical, and then you go into the interior design and the decor. So you work outside in, and really it starts with that idea. And that, I mean, it's a house, but you could do that. You could do, you apply that same methodology to any building. Granted, the bigger the building, the more complex, the more people have ideas, but that's how I design the houses I worked on.
That's really interesting. I'm gonna add one or two questions of my own.
Okay.
So, how do you manage a work-life balance, especially in a demanding field like the architecture industry?
You had to ask me a tough question, Anya. um, I manage it with grace, honestly. It can be tough. And one thing I continue to learn, because this is a continuous learning journey on that, is um, learn how to learn your boundaries. Set time for yourself. If I have to stop working at a certain time and get away from the computer and spend time with my family, I make a commitment to myself, and I make that communication clear to others. Um, Not every single day is easy. Balancing uh, kids, a husband, a house, dogs, and a career. Sometimes the hours need to be put into it more at work, and just having that communication with my husband. But for myself, is carving out time for myself and setting boundaries is critical. If not, it you burn out and it's no longer fun. But that's how I've been trying to manage it. And it's every day is something different. You always get a curveball.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna add something in the chat. These are just the links to the survey and the links to the Grow Up Club sign up. So please take a moment to fill those out. They're both very short, and if you fill out the survey, you get a chance to win a raffle prize, which is a gift card. And I'll
Awesome.
and I'll continue with the Q&A since there are more questions. So, how is the process of making sure that the building is safe for earthquakes?
Well, that's interesting. So that's when we work through the with the structural engineer. Um, we have building codes that we have to adhere to for every single discipline for a building, because there's three critical areas that we focus on: fire, life, and safety. Right? Make sure the building doesn't burn down, and if it does, it burns down safely to give a maximum amount of time to get people out to safety. Structure, holding it up as much as possible so it doesn't collapse. And then three, from in the United States, is the accessibility for everyone, so everyone could enjoy the space. And from an earthquake perspective, there we have to adhere to building codes. So our structural engineers work on calculations to ensure that the structural members that go into the building are sound, and we have to provide and review those calculations plus the drawings with building inspectors and building code reviewers. They're called city planners, to ensure that we're adhering to the building codes that are created by the international building codes. And in the state of California, for instance, we actually have the most stringent codes for seismic in the United States, because we're more prone to earthquakes. So we have more stringent codes than the international building code. So we have to prove every single time we have a structural change, we are doing calculations and ensuring that the structural integrity is up. It's it, it's an utmost importance is public safety.
Yeah, that's really important. One person asked, how do you ensure focusing toward work and life, keeping in mind about the negativity around us? Um,
Let me see if I could unpack that question, because I was reading that question as it was coming in. you know, there will be challenges. There is a lot of, I mean, with anything, if you listen to the negative all the time, you start to believe it, right? Um, and I, for one, from my own mental state and mindset, I do not listen to the negativity behind it. I look at it at the positive and like what needs to be done, how can I contribute to the community, how can I contribute to my profession, how am I healthy, is my family healthy, and I basically have to reassure, do I have the right perspective? Negativity will always be around you. There'll always be people who are doubting you. There'll always be people discouraging you. But if you have a conviction of what you want to do and who you are, and you're confident in yourself, and not to say that confidence is consistent or constant, but it's something that you have to work through. You could learn to balance your work life. Um, it's definitely a balance. It's a trade-off. Sometimes more work, sometimes less. Sometimes it's more life, right? Um, the key thing is recognizing what is negative and dispelling that and putting another solution for that, so you don't have to. So you don't you acknowledge the negativity, but you don't let that uh, eat away at you. So hopefully I answered your question. Um,
Yeah, I find that trying to like understand what negativity is around us is really important. So I have one final question just for this Q&A session, and then we'll wrap it up. So how do you stay updated with the latest trends and developments in the architecture industry?
that's interesting. So for myself, it's a various things. So I like trade journals, going to conferences. I do still partner with my local university, my university, my alma mater, to hear what's coming out of their programs and what they're exploring. Because the universities tend to be like an incubation of innovation of what they're looking for, changing the industries. Um, I also go to different organizations. I go to lectures. Sometimes it's like networking, and there's people are speaking about projects. It's and sometimes they may have done a project differently than I would have, but it's interesting to learn from that. So the speaker series, seminars, sometimes they're like breakfast or lunch and learns that are sponsored through the different organizations I highlighted before. From time to time, now the social media is more prevalent, because when I first entered, that wasn't really wasn't really used. YouTube, I'm sometimes I look for YouTube, I look for a topic and it comes up. I try to stay away from uh, Twitter or TikTok, mostly because those are not always fact based in regards to the profession, and I'm looking for a little bit more fact proven based information. So I would say YouTube. Every once in a while, something pops up on Instagram, kind of like a little teaser, and that leads me to exploring something online and website review. Um, there's podcasts that have been popping up as well that have been catching my attention, as in regards to different delivery methods and components of the industry that I like to listen to the thought process. But I would say the podcast entrance from a construction and architecture engineering is unique, is new to our field, because we're a visual profession. So that's why YouTube and an Instagram, the visual is more important than, and listening to it. Sometimes um, it's hard to visualize, but now I'm getting into some podcasts,
Yeah,
just beginning to explore that world.
yeah, I personally also use a lot of podcasts to learn about professions I'm interested in. So that's the end of the Q&A session. So I hope you all enjoyed the workshop, and I hope that we could address all of your questions. Thank you, Ms. Bernadette, for your time and for such an informative presentation and Q&A session. We all learned a lot about girls in STEM, and thank you to Olivia and Mission Viejo Library again for helping me host this series. Thank you to all of you for joining the second workshop in our Girls Go STEM speaker series. I loved all the chat interaction I saw today. As a reminder, there are a few more sessions in the following weeks, on September 24th, and an additional one on October 1st. The speakers will be from a medical and space engineering field. Please contact me or Olivia on the email IDs provided in the chat if you would like to have the Zoom information. And thank you all for joining, and please fill out the survey link if you haven't already.
Well, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Bernadette.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.